Good afternoon from Yammy BTV. Wishing you all well today and sending loads of love. Serious subject today. I've been asked a question about the bullying that goes on in prison, and one particular question I was asked was in the cates, can you get bullied to push things, like drugs, mobile phones, etc., where the sun don't shine, to hold other people's things for them? Yes, it goes on. It goes on in every prison, but there are different forms of bullying. I have to accept that I was a bully from the early days, the 90s, for intimidating and using strength and mental manipulation, basically to get, what I wanted, which we all know what it was, by threatening, violence, humiliating, and taking people's things off them, and maybe not so much in the latter days, in the cates, where I was getting things freely for nothing really. That I had to do the odd jobs here and there, which would count as bullying as well, on behalf, taking payment to do someone, hit them by way of violence, and get my payment also. But the weaker ones, that I think you're asking, forgot the name, where you know dealers, people that hold mobile phones, will threaten and get weaker people, or easily manipulating people for their own needs, because they don't want to get caught doing with the stuff they've got. Because in prison, the dealers, always at risk of getting spun, their cell, getting them making over, but going over by the staff, and the paranoia of living with that, because you and I both know that when you're selling stuff or involved in bad things, you could be a target for the authorities, because you can be watched, you can see who's going where, that addicts, will be going places to get those drugs. They know already that person's an addict, so they have to think where they're going to get it from. That a lot of money gets made by dealers in there. But the forms of bullying, the difference between the old days and the new days, is that bullying wouldn't really take place, because there was rules, not to hit the weaker ones who couldn't fight back, and others would intervene and get that person by way of violence, and sometimes very seriously. What I saw with my own eyes, sometimes the fear factor and bullying in front of others who you're scared of, so just say that I was on the landing and another guy was having words or had trouble with another guy, and there was a possibility that they may fight at some stage. So one person might have fear, might shout over the landing, threaten somebody, so that other person that he feared or could go into battle with could see him being aggressive towards somebody else. But a clever man would see right through it, because that the person also their self would know that he could be aggressive to that same person. So would that fear him, or maybe it would spur him on to know what that person was doing? So if I'm not making sense, I actually mean that others use others as targets, as to say, look, I can say that to him and offer him out, because he's not going to fight back. But really, he's sending a message out because he's scared to others that, listen, I'll have a go. So if you do that to me, say anything to me, I'll say the same thing that I just said to him. But like I said, you will be able to see right through it if you're experienced. But sadly, some won't be able to see right through it, and probably would fear that man because his voice is the loudest and he's good at making himself look aggressive. The other forms of bullying over the years, you know, there are times when, like even these days as well, you can't say all, but the knock on effect and the picking on is very, very real, especially since new drugs have come into the system as well. I saw some terrible, terrible things on the latter part of my institutional stay, where you can get people to smoke things, and then get them in a state where they've got to hold things or get them into debt and hold things. It's a weaker thing. It's a weaker thing, and it's a preying on an addict or a vulnerable person. But if you're agreeing to hold somebody's things and you're getting payment for it, is that bullying? I can't see it. That can't be seen. I used to want to hold drugs for people in the early days, but of course, with my reputation, nobody would take the risk of letting me hold their things just in case I do the whole lot overnight and there's nothing left in the morning. So they would be more giving to a weaker person to hold it, knowing full well that they'd be too scared to go into their parcel. Mobile phones, the same thing. Very easy to get adjudicated and nicked for those things because of the signals and things like that. So the paranoia, the person that uses their phone to do their business or talk to their people outside would get a weaker people, because you can lose time. You can actually go to court for having a mobile phone now in your possession. So you give it to the weaker ones. But every so often the weaker ones will, not pay their debt, maybe get scared, run down the segregation, and then names will get called. But bullying's a very sad thing. It can lead to very lasting effects, especially mental health, and people that haven't got the skills, who don't know how to protect themselves. They can get used and abused in so many different ways. It's very, very, very sad. Sad game there, and I have to accept that I used them tactics on dealers and ways of scamming and conning, phone cards in the old days, tobacco to go and buy the drugs, pulling moves everywhere, but somebody is getting hurt and not going to be happy. For the weaker ones, for the weaker addicts, who can probably go up once and say, oh, can I have two on tick, or blah blah blah, and then run off by the end of the week, and not pay the dealer, because they're frightened that they can't pay because they think they're going to get a hiding, and they run down the seg. There were times when I used to juggle everybody's fingers all at once in the case. There was a famous story where once I held the whole wing, and I was saying, yeah, I'll do this. Don't worry, I'll collect everything. I'll do everything, to try to balance 5, 6 people's canteen sheets all at the same time. But I would always say, yeah, I gave it to him, I gave it to him, I gave it to him. Don't worry, I've got to collect it. Yeah, and on Friday, but I really didn't give it to him. So then when the Friday canteen came, I said, no, they've all gone down the block. I know, looking back, it's quite funny. And when they all came to me, they said, Yammy, what, nothing at all. I said, no, what could I do? They wasn't very happy with me. But instead of, taking it like I did something wrong, I stopped talking to them for about a week. I started walking straight past everyone, and then in the end, they all let me back in and gave me again. But I'm just lucky. I think I was just lucky like that, and I was probably needed. The boys were saying the other day, I used to stand in the centre of the wing trying to juggle up everything all at once, things. But very, very dangerous games, and I can understand parents, loved ones who know their partners well and probably have some fear what could be going on inside there for them. It needs to be things. They've got new things in prison now, like with Bully Watch and things like that. But then again, addicts and people with problems and that can often play the victim themselves so that they get moved. Or that old one where they just you others, how can I phrase it? I don't even think how I can phrase it. Where they can just stick people in because they know that their dealers try and get them moved or whatever, so they don't have to pay the debt. There's so many different ways of doing it. But the physical thing of the bullying, picking on someone because you can beat them up, it's not really respecting, so because you think if you pick the easy targets, the real men who are watching, they're going to say, why? we ain't going to be frightened of that because that's an easy one. But the new generation, I mean, the new standards in prison compared to the old days is rather different now. You know, everybody and anybody gets attacked. So yeah, very dangerous places. But yep, it does go on if that answers your question. See you soon.